Senator Lole-Taylor.
Thank you. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak to this report. First of all, I acknowledge the work of the Social Services Committee that resulted in this report being submitted to the House. New Zealand First is pleased to be involved in the discussion, although it was very much of a late stage, given our return to Parliament recent election. There is no question that an inquiry was needed, and it is a shame that it had not been done earlier. Now that the report to this inquiry is before the House, the government now needs to do something about it. When identifying potential child offenders, the Social Services Committee addresses the importance of early detection of at-risk children. The government needs to look closely at the committee's recommendations, especially around government agencies, to focus on risk and protective factors. There needs to be a thorough analysis into the severity of risks that children identify with, and whether all these risks justify intervention. Collaborative cross-agency and government departments are a key to creating successful interventions. It is acknowledged that health and education sector must have more responsibility and input into the process. However, I believe that the government should consider a wider approach involving different key ministries, namely Pacific Island Affairs and the Māori's Affairs. These ministries need to contribute more towards addressing the social and economic drivers of offending. Recent incidents as a result of poor system administrative process in child, youth and family services highlight poor strategic thinking. 57% of child offenders apprehended are Māori, and just under 6% of them are Pacific Islands. That is 63% of Māori and Pacific Islands alone. The lack of awareness around cultural perspectives will make not only rehabilitation of existing youth offenders hard, but those who are possibly at risk. The cultural-specific approaches in the Youth Court for the Māori and Pacific offenders have been commended. However, there are still loopholes within these approaches. Application of specialised cultural services, for example, cultural assessment and relevant resources, would contribute to addressing some behavioural issues of children falling through the cracks. It should be mentioned that demographic areas need also to be considered, where government resources and funding should be allocated not to populace of cities, but by the highest concentration of youth offenders. There are still concerns surrounding programs to address at-risk children. Question needs to be asked, will there be a clear difference between rehabilitative programs for offending children and at-risk children? Compounding these two areas could lead to children ending up in compromising situations. The committee has identified mentor programs as a solution for at-risk children. However, the government will need to look at the effectiveness of such programs, as this will be very much dependent on the mentor themselves. I would also like to raise the question of parent accountability when it comes to child offenders. In most serious offences, the child has been brought up with dysfunctional and often abusive family situations, which potentially lead to behavioural problems. I do question whether lack of accountability at family group conferences needs to be addressed. Often, these sessions are clouded with political correctness, which then blurs the lines of accountability when addressing the real issues. It has been recommended that educational programs promoting good parenting are positive and effective ways to address these issues. Most programs need to establish, is that one or two? Okay. Most programs need to be established in terms of early parenting, and there is not enough avenues nor sufficient programs and support during the maternal stages, early maternal stages, especially for first-time parents. This begs the question, why aren't parents being held responsible, as their actions could very well be a leading factor in the circumstances of their child's offending? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Melissa Lee.